Okay.
Yeah.
We want to see progress.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. I kept waiting for everyone to get seated, but we will just go ahead and start the meeting. Kaylee, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Joan Jones.
Here.
Committee members Jan Holen.
Here.
Travis Cribble.
Here.
Tim Rupert.
Here.
Steph Olivieri. Here. Pam Hobday.
Here.
Jeffrey Manasco.
Here.
Rolf Godon.
Present.
Corey Caldwell.
Here.
And Lisa Wallace.
Here.
Vice Chair Jan Zabriskie, Jessica Penman, Lindsay Romack, Alicia Barr, Richard Palante, and Brian Wright are noted absent.
Thank you. I'm going to open for public comment. We don't have any public, but I would also, if there's any member of the committee that wanted to make a public comment, this would be the moment to do so. But I don't believe. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And we will move into our consent calendar. We have January 7th minutes. Would any member of the committee like to pull the one? Staff? Seeing that, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Great. Moving into presentations, staff updates. Kaylee, and first.
Okay, just a few staff updates tonight. First one is that the way that our planning commission is established is every council member gets to appoint the planning commissioner. Two of our council members, Lindsay and Courtney, were both just were reelected for a second term. And they are, both of their planning commissioners have chosen to step down and move on to other engagements. So they both have just appointed their new planning commissioners. Lindsay has appointed Amy Kaufman, who is a transportation planning expert in the community. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Courtney has appointed Jason Toops, who has been serving on the Community Economic Vitality Action Team for R2SC. And he's been doing great with the action team. He was actually one of the interviewers for the Catalyst projects. And because he will be stepping into his new, very important role as a planning commissioner, he is going to be stepping down from the action team for R2SC. And the reason for that is it's very important with projects coming forward to planning commission that we don't create any sort of conflict of him sort of weighing in on one project in one forum and then being in charge of approving it in another forum. So that was a conversation that we had with him, and he totally understands why he needs to step away from R2SC and is super excited to just stay engaged townwide, and then also will likely be continuing to attend some R2SC meetings just as a member of the public, just because he's very sort of engaged on what this group is working on. So I wanted to share that exciting news with you.
Is that effective? When was that effective?
That's effective immediately. He is going to try to actually come for part of tonight's meeting just to listen in as a member of the public. He had conflict for the beginning part, so he may or may not make it.
It was announced at town council, the most recent council meeting.
Yeah. Coming up on February 18th, so 2 weeks from today, the Chamber's Good Morning Truckee event. They will be highlighting sort of upcoming projects, and as part of that, Carissa and Jeff are going to be giving a brief update on R2SC Catalyst projects, and just sort of sharing the news of what's going on with that. So encourage folks to attend that. That's in this room at, I think it's at 8 a.m. on the 18th. And then at our last meeting, we sought out volunteers interested in being on the Downtown Railroad Crossing Feasibility Study Steering Committee. And just wanted to follow up on that. We did receive a handful of volunteers from R2SC and a number of communities or at-large members who were interested in participating. Rather than sort of picking and choosing, what we have chosen to do is invite everybody who applied for that to participate on that committee. So that first committee meeting will be coming up soon. I know we have several representatives in this room who will be participating. I think Corey, Jessica, who's not here, Travis, Lisa, Rolf? Yeah. so-
The meeting's actually tomorrow at 4:30.
Or tomorrow. I
In
knew
this
it was
room.
coming up soon. So,
Yep.
yeah. So that's all I have for updates. Did I miss anything, Krista?
Oh, that's everything.
Okay.
I have a question about the, is it right if about the Good Morning Truckee?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed, did you say who's gonna give the presentation?
So it'll be Jeff and with Carissa.
Great.
So providing.
I just have a request that, kind of equal weight as opposed to extra weight. Equal weight is given to all aspects of the work of the steering committee. I think the catalyst projects have been highlighted a lot lately, and that's, obviously they're important. But there's a lot of other parts to the scope of work, and so to make sure that the entirety of the scope is conveyed.
Yeah, that's great.
I really, really agree with that. And so
Concur.
that people can see that this is the umbrella
Yeah.
to everything.
Mhm.
And that can be lost with everything that just occurred,
Mhm.
the intensity and all of it. So thank you. Bringing that up.
Great point. Thank you.
Carissa, anything else?
That's all.
Great. Did you finish?
I'm done.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So we had some public comment. Did we have any other comment on this item? Okay, moving on. We have our CVAT update. So this is Catalyst Projects. We did want to make sure that this group got all the in-depth information because not everybody was able to attend all of the workshops and meetings. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Pam.
All right, hello everyone. So what we're gonna do is go through the slides that we presented at Town Council that approved the 3 catalyst projects. We'll shorten it up. There are a couple areas where I wanna, Pam and I will dive deep, and I think it's important to Lisa's point as well, that this body knows as much as possible as to what transpired, because a couple times I've heard folks that only have some pieces and some part, and there really was a long process to this. There was a huge outreach to the community, it was very in-depth interviews, and how the process of how the projects were selected. I just think it's really important because being new to small towns, I've learned everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's beautiful everyone lives here. And so sometimes based on that, I think they bring a bias or et cetera based on prior interactions. So, with that, I'll
You
go
have the
through.
mouse, Jeff? If you want me to.
Yeah, right click.
We're right,
All right.
I can-
where the wheel.
Oh, there it goes.
That'll work, okay.
Oh, oh, oh. Okay.
You just tell me when I wanna talk.
Okay.
So we'll move it forward for me.
Okay,
I'm used to clickers.
I made a comment to town council, but I think it encapsulates a lot of the work that's been done here. Thanked them for the bold leadership to support the River Revitalization Steering Committee initiative. Talked about trust, momentum, and taking risk. The River Revitalization Steering Committee intent is to not write a plan to sit on a shelf. In 2005, a plan was crafted with limited actions. We sit here 20 years later trying to reinvigorate much of the same vision and goals. Tonight is about selecting 3 catalyst projects, which will result in the creation of potentially three partnership agreements that will come back to council for approval. There is no intent of an open-ended check, rather an opportunity to engage with the private sector in a spirit of collaboration. We sit tonight at a crossroad between our town and entrepreneurs with an opportunity to create accountability for all stakeholders, aligned on common goals that leads to revitalizing our river corridor for community benefit. So I opened with that and then went into this presentation. So the first slide is just out of the 2040 general plan. Some key words: healthy environment, housing, full-time residents. Downtown is the heart and soul of our town. Multi-use trails and transport solutions.
In for three.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah, that's really sensitive. Highlighted the town's already investments in the downtown corridor between the Legacy Trail, Del Bay Umaway Park, West River Streetscape, the reimagined bridge. Together, these are public investments in our corridor already that are about $47 million. And I think that the town, the public sector, has done their part of trying to revitalize with the public investment piece. Now, and we've talked about this, it's really time to work with the private sector, the land and the business owners, to help them as well. Next slide. This is just talking about, I think most folks, the economic study that BA did, reaching out to many of the property owners. One of the big statements from a lot of property owners, business owners within the corridor, if the plan is done, something that's actionable. Work in partnership, the idea of the Catalyst projects and the Catalyst RFI request for interest was approved by town council on the 8th of October. The RFI, we approved it in this forum here, I forget when, but it was probably November. But 3 Catalyst projects, keep it a very simple process, be collaborative and focus on partnerships and understanding the individual property owners' needs. This, after the RFI, everything, the engagement with the land and business owners was done by smaller committees such that it was not Brown Act, so that there was not a minute, it was not recorded, such that the land and business owners, when they were having the conversation, could talk freely. Talked about the timeline, so from the 8th of October, let me back up. We had begun the discussion of a Catalyst idea, I think, in September. Wasn't that long ago. And then it went to town council on the 8th of October, and then town council approved the 3 Catalyst sites on the 20th of January, so just last week. So it's 112 days to include Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the holidays, New Year's. So a lot of work to include in the midst of the winter. The RFI was published, and this is for this forum to know, it was out, it was in the papers, it was on the town's website, it was in digital, on social media. Our consultants had contacted everyone that they had interviewed or tried to. There was a huge effort to, beyond if someone didn't get it on their phone, etc. It was phone calls, knocking on doors, and a lot of people in this room talking to folks to say, hey, the RFI is out. If you're interested, please apply. And there was a meet and greet on the 9th of December. The applications were due on the 20th. 9 applications were received. 1 applicant pulled their application, and 1 applicant put in 2 applications, so it was combined. So it was 9, resulted in 7 people, 7 landowners that went through the process. The interviews were the 6th to the 10th of January, and it was done by an interview committee, again, because the Brown Act was, kind of here's and theirs, and so the interview committee was Pam, R2SC, also in the Economic Vitality, Jason Toops, who's in the Economic Vitality, and then Jake Hudson off the River Health, because we wanted, as we went through this process, kind of as you opened, Lisa, is to make sure that's not just looking at the economic, what's doable right now. And if you don't know Jake, superhuman, he's a geologist, and he does a lot of this kind of work professionally. So it's really good to have him on the interview committee. So when he looked at the sites, he was not only just looking at it from, does this kind of make sense, he also brought a professional eye of what stormwater, erosion, he looked at it through a professional lens as well. I think that's important to note. On the 17th, the Community Economic Vitality Action Team, CDAT, met, that's a Brown Act. Most of the applicants, and some of the land and business owners that were not applicants were there. Again, Brown Act meeting, went through the 7 properties and went in depth into 3 recommended projects. I did not say all this at the town council, but lots of really good discussion amongst the applicants. I would also say that there were no applicants. There were 4 that were not selected, or not recommended, I should say, ultimately not selected. There was no harshness, I got screwed. A lot of folks said it was a pretty good process, and a couple of them, as I'll talk about further, we're not saying you're not selected. We're going to stay engaged with them, because some of them I think are, not me, the entire interview committee, the entire Economic Vitality Action Team. I think some of them are, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but I think they're very actionable. That can make, we can make impact with them. And the 3, yeah.
Do you want me to add something now?
Yeah,
about
now
that?
would be perfect, yeah.
Yes, so I just want everyone to know on this committee that we saw all your faces in our heads. Travis, all your comments about property owners. Someone else sitting right here, Corey, talked a lot about property owners. We all, everyone here on this committee cared about property owners. And Tim attended one of the interviews as well. And it was extremely important to us that no one felt rejected. And that we feel strongly that we are going to continue. And we will talk more about that.
Yep.
But there are things that we can help every property owner with that are pretty exciting. And we want volunteers from this committee and from our other committee. And that will be totally volunteer work. That will not be with staff support or with any money from staff. But it will be so great continuing to represent those property owners.
All right, so next slide. Kind of talked about most of this, talked about the members. Just so you know, the interview questions were shared ahead of time. There was a rubric used for the selection criteria that came right out of the RFI. And
Let me talk a little bit more.
yeah, I was gonna say, why
about
don't you,
specific-
yeah, why don't you do that?
So the interview committee, Jason, Jake, and I met for 4 hours on the Sunday before we interviewed. 4 hours. We toured every property, kind of rocked around illegally, sorry. But we did.
Trespassers.
We were trespassing. But we wanted to be sure we had in our minds the property owner's property, you know, and then we talked about process and how important it was that we had equity for every single person who had put in an application. And Carissa was there as well, thank heavens, because Carissa kept copious notes. So we had 4 people who kept notes. The rubric, well, let me back up a little bit. The goals that this committee set, the criteria for selection, we handed to each applicant near the end of the interview. And we went through each of the items. So walking, cycling spaces was.
Can you go to the next slide? I think
It
this will
doesn't
help.
have it?
No, the next slide has it, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the goals on the right, we had a document for each applicant, and we together decided whether we checked those boxes or not. So if all those boxes weren't checked, they probably weren't going to be recommended as a catalyst project. Okay, so that was one. Then we had another rubric that we, the 4 of us, filled out separately, and we decided we would not talk with each other about anything till we completed all the interviews. And I want you to know that we agreed on everything, 100%, which was pretty amazing, knowing the 3 of us. And do you want me to share more
Yeah,
about the
I do,
interviews?
yeah.
Okay, so, we were really touched by our 25 hours of interviewing. And these property owners, every single one showed up prepared. Maybe a little nervous, because Tim was there for one property owner, but prepared and passionate, leaned into vulnerability and told us the history of the properties, even if it meant family histories. And you could feel their passion. And then they talked about their vision for their property. And I think for us, and they also talked about barriers. But when they talked about barriers, they were very matter of fact. They were not ranting and raving. And we could see that there were some barriers that we could help them overcome. That's the moving forward part. I have to say that we were inspired by every single person who presented. We were just inspired. And Jason and Jake and I would text each other at night and go, "Are you sleeping?" "No." You know, we were just really honored to represent each of you and our subcommittee, and to have the number of applicants. And so I want to share with this committee who the applicants were and who we interviewed. And this is the order in which we interviewed them. So Bill Kenny and Nancy Costello, and you'll see these, but I just want to read the names in the order that we interviewed them. Andy and Alicia Barr, Jan Holland, Greg Hendrickson, Mark Tanner, Yvette Durant, and Jeff Bender. Al Pombo, Carla did not come to the interview. Al just wanted to come by himself. And Jack Guzman put an application in and then withdrew it. So we wanted this committee to know who all those people were and the order. And the order really doesn't matter.
And they're on the map on the slide here.
Right.
Yeah.
For context.
And so what was important is if you look at on the map and you look at the blue stars, these are the people that we want to continue working with, who were not selected as our catalyst projects. And in the yellow are the catalyst projects. And Jeff will talk more about that. And then lastly, I think it's really important to know that moving forward, all of us sitting here, I know, feel strongly on how proud we are of everyone who applied. And you're gonna hear more about the Catalyst projects in a minute. But I think as you see these people and you know them well and they're good friends, it felt like family to us, like we're gonna help, you know? And I could give you all sorts of examples, and we can when people are assigned to those properties. But I just can't overemphasize the openness and the honesty of these property owners.
I think it's important context that we have, just so you know the process that we went through. For the project areas, Pam delineated the four. I think it's worth. We did not mention this in the town council, but the Hendrickson property. He wants to do some lot line adjustments, and while not easy, pretty executable. So we think we can help there.
And Tim was in that meeting. Right?
Tim.
Tim. And Tim can help with this too, but the lot line adjustments will just be amazing for Greg and for his family. And the big thing will be the next steps for Greg, but I feel Greg was actually happy he was not selected as a catalyst project. He was relieved.
Yes.
And he really wants the help for this next step.
Nancy Costello and Bill Kinney want to do some work with ADUs. There's already a process within the town, a couple folks that do that, but we think we can help them. That when I say we, at the end of the process, there's the 3 catalyst projects. They'll get partnership agreements, and then there will be some town staff time and some consultant time, and I think there will be some liaisons off of this committee or et cetera to help shepherd that process. And then for the ones that were not, because town council, when they approved these catalyst projects, it was just for these 3. So in the community and the economic vitality team, and what Pam has discussed is we plan to stay engaged, and we're going to ask for volunteers to help the other 4 that were not selected as catalyst projects.
I want to talk a little bit more about this project though, because some of you, I hope, will think about volunteering to be, so we can all be with this. I see Nancy as a community expert on ADUs, wouldn't you say, Carissa?
She's done a lot of research.
A lot of research.
And she has benchmarked. So when she talked to us about going to Portland, then going to Scottsdale, I mean, she spent days there and met with the city of Portland and looked at how their ADU policies were put together. And, I mean, she's really excited about this and has ideas for not only their property, putting an ADU, 1 or 2 in the back by their garage, but using their house and the ADU as kind of a show place where people could come and see what this could be like.
Right off the new sidewalk in West River.
Right, right off that new sidewalk. But anyone on this committee who's interested in exploring ADUs, she is a professor of ADUs. And I was thinking if the town ever, there's a new law, I forget what it is, 10,
AB 133.
thank you.
AB is 1033.
Good job. And San Jose is looking at this, and Berkeley's looking at this. I know the town is, Jen said, but I was just envisioning how wonderful Nancy would be on some committee, you know, helping. She'd probably lead it and do all the heavy lifting. But I wanted you to know that, and then her husband, Bill Kenny, has been on HPAC for about 7 to 8 years, I think he said.
The Bender Durant, they were looking at some housing possibilities, work, live, maybe 3-ish to 4 on existing property. And Al Pombo, at the very end of East River Street, was looking at screening. And he stated he is interested in actually doing the screening and putting in the landscaping, but needs some help on, you know, what are the right plants, how to do this. So I think there's easy option, and he's willing to do it. So
Al said that Carla wanted to do the screening, and therefore he will do the screening. It doesn't matter, they're doing this together, but that he wanted to wait 5 years to really do anything. And that's a complicated situation, but he was amazing. He was so caring and giving and talked about his 50 years here, and you all know him well, and he was just such a gentleman. He was wonderful.
Did he mention if he's discussed any of this with the Lopez boys?
He has not.
He hasn't, okay.
And that may be why he's ready for screening and nothing more.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's very thoughtful with them.
And
Yes.
by screening, he really is thinking landscaping,
Landscaping.
just to be clear.
Yeah.
No fencing.
Yeah, landscape.
Yeah, landscape.
Just landscape.
Maybe the next slide. So then the 3 recommended, so the first was there's 2 pieces to this. There's a time element and geography. So there's Tanner property on the east, ours in the middle, Holland on the west. And there's also a time element. So the bar is farthest along. Everyone here probably knows that they've been working on this for a long time. Holland property has been working on it, but not as far along as the bar property. And then Mr. Tanner's here. He'll talk about what he is thinking. That's the longest probably time horizon. So there's both a geography and a time element. So the bar property, been working with the town since about 2017. You can see the existing building there. They want to build a restaurant, bar, distillery, outdoor spaces. It's adjacent to the new park. Council approved it with a caveat. There's another piece of property right next to the land that they own. They'll either move forward with their project on both lots, assuming they acquire the second lot, or they will continue on the property they currently own. Town staff is not going to work on the participation agreement until it's either both lots or one lot. The bar said at the public meeting they think that they'll know within a couple weeks. They're very exciting and far along. I will say, being the new guy, a lot of people are like, oh, it's done, it's done, it's done. This project is not done, but it's close. And so this Catalyst project becomes a very quick, public can see it, something's happening, and it really kind of opens up West River Street, and I think helps highlight the park and the bridge and the landscaping, the streetscaping that's just gone in.
Lisa had a question.
To add, can I just add
Yeah.
something, and I think it will help Lisa. But remember that this project still has to go through CEQA.
Mhm.
That could totally blow everything up, as we know, we don't know. And the bars know. And then it has to go through Planning Commission and the rest of the normal, like all projects. But they've been 7 years and they're to this place.
What I was gonna say is I thought that and that comment on, sorry to back up for a minute, on CEQA and Planning Commission, that's the case for any
Everywhere.
project, like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
not unique to the bars, that's
Right.
for every project. What I really appreciated at the town council meeting about this discussion, I thought Dave Pollavy, could have been a tough situation to raise the issue of both
Mhm.
parcels. And I thought he was very good in raising the issue of, is the Catalyst project one or two parcels? And not having everybody invest until that point is clarified. And by
Yeah.
invest, I mean invest time,
Time.
not money, time. I mean time. And so I appreciated Dave bringing it up, and then Jeff, I just thought you did great, kind of as that part of the deliberation, continued through, and really supported that. It could get confusing, and now it'll just be clarified. Is the Catalyst project one parcel or two parcels?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is the second parcel part of what is now still the old courtyard?
Yes.
Yes.
So it comes in several feet or from the edge of the building into the,
Hillary?
Yeah, I can
Answer
address that. I'll come back over to you. What Jeff referred to as the second parcel is a portion of the parcel that used to be the county's corporation yard or is now becoming Del Bayuma Way Park.
yeah.
So there's a 0.12 acre sort of little rectangle of that parcel on the far west side of the parcel, directly next to the existing building on that slide, which is on private property. The town did a separate RFI process in 2017 when we were starting the plans for redevelopment of that parcel, and selected 2 projects to work with the town as potential sort of activation commercial elements on that parcel. This was, the bar's proposal was one of the 2 that was selected through that process. The other one happens to be the one that Joan is a part of. This one, so that process began in 2017. There have been multiple steps in that as we sort of plan out the park, which is part of why it's taken a while. We're at the point now where in December, after much back and forth, the town provided the bars a purchase and sale agreement, which would be sort of the step to finalize the sale of that portion of the parcel to them, and then we would do what's called a lot line adjustment to expand their existing parcel to include that land that is currently town property. So that draft agreement is with the bars at this point. We haven't got a response on it yet. They indicated they have attorneys who are sort of doing the review of that and expect to get back to us as soon as this week on that. So it hasn't been finalized, which is, that was the part that Councilmember Pallavi brought up, is before we move forward on developing a catalyst project, we really just need to know, are we including that land, are we not including that land, so we know what project we're talking about.
How far into the park, if you will, does that parcel that bars wanna go?
It's, the overall park is, I think it's 1.4 acres, that total
Mhm.
parcel, and this is, 0.12 acres. So it's not a very large area. I don't know exactly how many feet, I can't remember, it goes into that parcel, but it's not a huge portion.
The part that's down there that's not finished right now is
Yeah.
what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me
So-
know when I can ask a question.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna finish the presentation and then we'll open to questions,
Okay.
or?
Yeah, and in the interest of time, because there's a lot to go through, I'm gonna speed this up, and then let's do questions. So bar property, next?
You have the.
Oh,
I can.
next? Hey, it's voice activated.
Set the clicker.
Okay, Tanner property, Mark is here, he's gonna talk about it, but a long-term vision of what could be done there. So I will not go on, but lots of potential, and Mark's gonna talk to some of that here when we're done. The Holland property, I will point out, and you can see it on the photo, and I keep saying, I wish we had better names so we didn't personalize it so much.
We can come up with
Holland, what's the name of the?
Truckee River Village.
Truckee River Village, 8 investors in the group. It's a long-term project. The catalyst is only being recommended for phase 1, which is the 2 brown storage buildings closest to the streetscape of turning it into a maker's village. Pretty exciting. That is the Holland project. Truckee River Village, thank you. So then the next steps, which is what's going on, Chris is gonna talk about, is it's not an open-ended check, so the town staff is working through participation agreement of this here's what the town is willing to provide in terms of consultant time, staff time, without trying to without making it a 75-page legal document, probably more than 1 page, but pretty simple if the town's willing to do this. Part of that as well is, I don't wanna get ahead of I think we've agreed is that we will have a liaison off the river revitalization steering body, we'll say a river person, rather regardless.
Or action team member.
Or action team members, that's what I mean, just related with the overall, under the umbrella. At least one, I'm recommending 2, just in case somebody gets sick or et cetera, because I think it's gonna be a fair amount of time. And then when the property owner and the town get together, the liaison would be there to help shepherd some of that process as well.
I think since Jan and Mark are here, we should talk about the projects.
I'm just really worried about time.
So for time wise.
So for time,
we have Mark here.
Yep.
If you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Before we do that, I'm
Yeah,
recommending at least one.
Travis,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
Travis,
Yeah.
yes, yep.
So, pardon me for having puzzles all over the place, pieces of the
Understand.
puzzle. You mentioned that you intimately walked everybody's property. When you walked the bar's property, what were you looking at the bar's property? And did you know that they didn't have a signed deal on a piece of the property before we recommended them for the Catalyst project? I didn't really know all that until David brought it up at the town council meeting. I don't know that everybody didn't know about that, but if we passed up other people in this process to talk to somebody and approve them, and they don't even have a signed deal on the property yet, doesn't sit well with me.
But they have two projects,
They
right?
have-
So if they don't go forward with the
Perfect.
purchase, they still have a project on the other one, which I gave me comfort.
That's why I was asking that.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm saying to you, that gave me comfort, there is still a viable.
Did you guys
project.
know that when you walked the properties? Okay, so that's why I'm bringing that up. So they approved somebody, they didn't even know that. They were looking at a bigger picture.
Well, we were looking at what we were given.
Correct, that's what I'm
okay,
saying. It
From the
was-
town.
So they gave, so I'll just give context of what was provided to the interview
Right.
team. Andy and Alicia applied with an APN number and an address. And so I provided maps of those parcels, which was only the parcel where the blue building is. Everyone know what I'm talking about, the blue building? So it's just
Yes.
that parcel. And during the interview, they addressed, just since I was in the room, it was not part of the decision making, but I heard them explain their vision of, is what the, interview team essentially helped choose them as a selection of recommendation, because council made the actual selection.
Yeah.
So the interview team made a recommendation based on the vision of what was explained to them and how it aligned with the R2SE goals. Does that make sense?
It does, but when I asked her, she said,
Well,
Correct.
No, we
We
weren't
didn't
a-
know legally where things were. We were told that there have been legal issues that they have had with the town for 7 years. And they went into a lot of detail on that.
and you made the decision based on one or both pieces of property.
I think we made the decision based on the vision of the future
The vision of the
for
future,
a catalyst project.
for one or both pieces of property.
I don't know how to answer that, Travis, because we didn't really talk about it.
It didn't,
honestly.
I'll be honest, the interview did not go into those kind of details, and if you
It
remember, the
really didn't.
RFI application is
That's
super
fine,
high
that's fine.
level on
Yeah.
purpose.
I got what I needed. The other question I have is, he so graciously, Tanner's here, and he wants to move his thing off the river.
Well, maybe you have to listen to him.
No,
There are
no.
all sorts of options.
No, I know, but we don't even have a receiver, so we haven't even collectively come up with a receiver site. And we're accepting somebody in a catalyst project, and we have no place for them to go. That's my question.
I think that's the catalyst.
Yeah.
That's
That
why it's a
is
catalyst.
what-
And let Mark share his
Well,
vision.
I'm asking
Well,
the
yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
I can listen to Mark, but I have the right to ask the questions.
course.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a receiver site?
I don't know.
So there's a receiver
I'm
committee,
not on that committee.
Stephanie?
We have several potential sites.
Potential. Where are they?
Well, the ones that our committees looked at that are most seriously would be at Pioneer Center. I think there are 7 or 8 sites. What did I send you? I didn't bring that with me. 7 or 8 properties.
Undeveloped land.
Undeveloped land.
It's
that
kind of
could-
northeast of the existing
yeah,
developments
that
of
could
Pioneer.
that is still available for development there, Travis.
Northwest,
Like
sorry.
up Trout Creek?
That's one, and he's
Trails
look-
End.
He's looking at buying Larry Long's property, which is a bigger parcel, and to develop.
There's
as-
no infrastructure up there, okay, Larry Long's property. Yeah.
Mhm. And properties that are within the Pioneer Center itself, that are not owned necessarily by Ciro. In fact, I think most of them, I think one was Ciro's and the others were other people, but they were
Yeah.
undeveloped with potential.
Yeah.
So those are potential sites.
There's
In addition-
also,
oh,
there's the reason that me, Richard, and Brian are the committees from, airport, sanitation, public utilities, there's opportunities. There's kind of some if-thens with some dominoes, if with TDPUD, airport's transferring land to sanitation district. So it's somewhere between no and potentially up to 120 acres, between those 3 public utilities, or 3, not all public utilities, but between those 3. But again, they're dominoes, with the idea if, let's say, Mark Tanner's like, I'm willing to move off here's the vision, it's, 3/4 of an acre, need utilities, or I need X, Y, and Z, then it also gives something really tangible. It's kind of a chicken and the egg. So, as an airport staff, when we've talked to our board about it, they're like, well, what's the demand? Like, well, we don't know.
Chicken and egg, right?
Right, and so I think
Yeah.
the opportunity here is, if Mark were to say, I need, 1 acre, X amount of this, parking, access, then it becomes easy to go to the public, to the special districts and say, hey, it's 1 acre, or it's 4 acres, it's for the East River, and this is why. All of a sudden, it becomes a call to action with something tangible, as opposed to, well, I've heard about this for years. We've been talking about receiver sites for 20 years. What is there really to do? This becomes, canary in the coal mine to let's try it, potentially.
And the same with Pioneer Center. The pieces-
And same with Pioneer Center.
The pieces there are potential pieces.
And
We-
faster and
We
easier.
hopefully will be putting together those who are looking for a site to be moved off the river with those who have property that is available, and hopefully we can help, or they can facilitate
Yeah.
the process themselves, but there are sites that are available, have potential.
Okay, great. I've asked this time and time again, where are the receiver sites? Nobody knows. I would like that information, like on a piece of paper, telling me what APNs and where they're at, so I can research that myself. Because
Yeah.
we can throw it all out there
Right.
and say it's going to happen and will it to happen, and if it's not there, it's not there. But if there's sites somewhere, I would like to know where they are and which ones they are.
Travis, I can get you notes from our receiver site subcommittee. We haven't formed an official document to hand you, but I can get you the
That should be
APNs.
information everybody on the R2SC should have, receiver site information.
I seem to remember about 2 meetings ago, we
Yeah.
actually had a presentation with
Yeah.
Yeah.
some slides.
We had the
I remember looking at.
slides.
I can get those printed for you, Travis.
But there's future meetings that we're gonna discuss that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, our committee is, we're gonna be meeting again for our committee. Ciro Mancuso's in Hawaii, but we can get him involved again, and we do have the plot numbers, we do know where they are, and be able to report back to you.
Well, I just like the information.
Yes, we have provided some.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I think this theme's come up a bunch with the whole discussion of the catalyst sites, probably with the action team. But the theme of uncertainty and ambiguity and trying to move forward through it, probably that came up with your action team. I don't really
It did.
know. It came up when we had the discussions at the R2SC. It came up again at town council.
It did.
I'm sure it just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It
keeps
does.
coming up,
It
right?
does, yeah.
And so I think that the questions that get raised about all the unknowns with these potential catalyst sites, like they're totally legitimate points.
Yeah.
And my perspective as one steering committee member is we're trying to create a structure to work through
Mhm.
all those uncertainties and all those difficulties, which again are legitimate uncertainties and difficulties. And we're purposefully engaging before we have all the answers. Like we're doing that on purpose.
Yes.
It might not work, but it
May
might.
not.
But trying to get all the answers first
Will
hasn't
not
worked
work.
for 20
Will
years.
not
work. Exactly.
20 years.
Right.
Yeah, to be able to, I totally agree with you, and to be able to move forward and get something done, the town has built everything the town can build on their property. And it's time for private citizens to move forward, and to do that, oftentimes providing people with choices and options and looking at sites that maybe aren't even secure yet, where a developer or someone can say, I'm really interested in this, and you just don't know what's gonna happen after that. And so it's impossible because every single property and all 7 of these are very unique and very different and have very different needs based on the river orientation, based on walkability, all of it. So you're right.
And I think it gives the public something to think about, and the property owners in these districts we're looking at, especially our little relocation committee, because someone, not our catalysts, could say, oh, there is land,
Yes.
I'm gonna look into it.
Yes.
My tenants could move there, I could go forward with a project. I think these are all the things that happen, it's sort of a domino effect. And we just need to provide opportunity for people and something for them to grab onto.
Yep.
So with that, Mark, we'd like to welcome Mark Tanner. He has one of the sites that was selected as catalyst site. We invited him today because he's not been heard at all in this committee. To your group, yes, but not to the broader group, and we thought it'd be nice for the larger committee to hear about Mark's ideas and vision and what he's hoping to get out of this process. So welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Does that give me the start of?
Yeah, roll the drums.
You get it, yeah.
Done.
Roll the drums.
Well, fantastic. So we purchased about 12 and a half, 13 years ago, property on East River Street. It's, I would consider it, well, it's a legal non-conforming use property because when we started developing it, when I say developing it, more like TIs, it's an industrial property on the river. And it used to be anytime power sports and thin air, basically. So it was kind of an, we'll say, an automotive use, basically. I needed to move my business, which is a construction company, from what was technically a residential property in Tahoe-Donner, next to the town courtyard, away from there because it wasn't appropriate. Not that this property was appropriate for me, but I could get it at least more appropriate at the time. And so we made improvements, went through the town process, got approvals, moved Mark Tanner Construction onto the river. I knew this property was not the best use in terms of its current state. A construction yard and office space on the river is not great for river frontage. There's a much better public benefit. And so with the river revitalization, that's been talked about since 2004-ish, give or take, so almost 20 plus years. Nothing's really occurred. So, till recently, and I was encouraged to apply, and I figured everyone along the river would apply. You got 9 of probably 30 properties or more that could have applied, which is great, but there's just so many opportunities. So I look at my property as I just happen to be a property owner that lives in the town, loves the town, kids here, been here for 30 years. And so I know we as a community and me as a business owner can do better. Now what that means, I really don't know. That's why I put my application in and really want to see from the committee to the community to everyone, what is the best use for this 250 feet of river frontage. Now that being said, I own one property. I'm one domino, okay? There are adjacent properties next to me that have same type of what I will call inappropriate use. It works for the owners right now, they get rent or it's a use, but it's not the best for the community and for the river. And so if I can be a catalyst, not knowing what I'm a catalyst for at this point, but I'm a domino that will help others either join me or follow suit. There's specifically 3 properties that could be part of this. And this is kind of an interesting thing that, like, oh great, after everything that happened with the bars the night of the council meeting, I'm like, good God, I don't even say that, you know, I could be one of 3 because right now I applied as 1. But it makes no sense for me to be the only one that goes if the other 2 don't go as well, because you're creating something great, but then it's kind of in something that's not great. So things around it have to change as well. And so my vision is that, you know, those properties will be part of an overall dream of what the river can be. Now that being said, maybe it's just single family residences is what's determined in the end. Great, but I'd rather find out from the community what that would be. You got one shot at it. I mean, you got more shots because you could always build something and find out it's not good and then tear it down, but what's the point of doing it then?
Not in our lifetime.
Exactly. And like Joan said, for me, it's a legacy property, okay? I'd like to see something while I'm still here, and who knows how long that still could be, that is a legacy property for the community, the town, people, everything. And so that really speaks to me, for my kids, and so for my grandkids, but I don't have any yet. So, but it's part of the community, and that's the way I look at it. But I don't know necessarily what it is. Do I have ideas like, oh, I mean, we're zoned residential, but as part of this revitalization, again, you get to dream. And so, is it better to be a community center? Is it better to be nonprofit building? Is it better to be, I mean, we could just tear everything down and just make it open space. I don't know. Whatever is determined or decided, it does need to be financially viable. Because I have an asset that has gone up in value and it needs to be financially viable because I can't just give it to the community. I'd love to, but I'm not Mark Zuckerberg or someone like that I could just, give something like that away. So I need to make it viable. Now, whether I stay there, sure, if that's what people think could work from how it's redesigned. But I think, again, in my personal opinion, it's better for me to move somewhere else, not on the river. Because again, a construction company on the river, how does that benefit? But then that strikes me, what are the other sites? Well, I go buy another site in the town or somewhere else. And that's where, again, river revitalization, it's where this is more than just me now. This is the committee, this is town council, town staff. It's a part of a bigger group that will help to figure out the bigger picture. And one of the biggest things we're gonna need to deal with is UP, okay? Everyone knows UP is kind of like, they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. And so they're gonna be a critical piece to this. I mean, my original goal when I bought the property and then was a little bit of vision. Rick Hawley is a very good friend of mine. He was the original developer of the rail yard. Since then, he's kind of been bought out and he's kind of done with the rail yard and others have gotten involved. We talked about having an open land swap and then my parcel would be part of river frontage for the rail yard development in some type of capacity. We didn't get too far in terms of how the vision and development of that would go, but that it would complement the interior holiday or rail yard development with river frontage. And then I might take a little spot inside the rail yard development that would act as my office. And so, again, better use for me inside and better use for everyone else outside. With what's happened with the rail yard that has developed and Rick's kind of out now, so my idea of us doing a land swap, okay, that never worked. So that's why I hadn't moved forward with anything like Yawn or the bars or anyone else, because that's what I thought was gonna happen. So like, well, it didn't happen. I'm like, well, just sit here until we figure something out. When this committee came about and the Catalyst project came about, it spurred ideas like, okay, here's another chance to think about long-term and how it might go. I'd love to see it happen quick, 5 years or less, but a lot of things have to happen. And the only way that'll happen, because I'm busy running a business owning, is having other people help me with that. And so I think that's the opportunity here that the Catalyst presents for not only our selection or nomination, but the others that weren't nominated and those that haven't even applied. I mean, again, this is about the entire river corridor from basically 89 all the way to the sanitation property at the end of East River. It's that entire stretch, more so on the north side than anything on the south side. A lot of the south side properties are owned by larger public agencies and what have you. And it's kind of the north side has already been developed. And so it's kind of like my property's kind of like John's. We're an opportunity. From there, it's how we figure it out. And so I look at it as a blank canvas, and now we need to paint that canvas in terms of however we think it could be in the future, not for 10 years, 20 years, hundreds of years. Again, legacy. So that's kind of where I'm at. I do still think I'm one domino of several. I know several of the adjacent properties owners next to me. I don't know one of them. And so, again, it's getting that communication and dialogue going so that more can happen. So that being said, there's my spiel. I can talk a lot. Better to ask questions or thoughts, but I'm like, we're so much at ground zero right now. That's where we're at. I mean, I don't even know what the partnership agreement's gonna look like. If Andy Morris is gonna come up with 20 pages or 1 page. And I have no idea what kind of financial contribution that, you know, the town is making on this in terms of just that they said, we're gonna help with staff time, we're gonna help with, you know, consultant time, we're gonna help with committee time. The more volunteers we have to achieve this dream, the better. And so, you know, that's kind of the way we look at it. And so, again, I'm fortunate enough to have a piece of property on the river. River frontage is, there's only so much of it. And so let's do it right.
Thank you, Mark, for applying and for your comments tonight. I'll open it up for questions. Seeing none, I would just say that I look at this as the catalysts as experiment. We're trying to do something different and something that could spur on a lot of change. And it is a bit risky and it's a bit unknown, as Lisa said earlier. And yeah, Travis, we don't have it all figured out, but that's part of the process. And actually, it's the good part of the process in that maybe we can make things easier for property owners. We can figure out, and there's so many brains in the room that can really help make things be successful that one person couldn't do and would run up against a lot of roadblocks. So hopefully we can remove some roadblocks.
I just want to say that Mark's project, or his interest in this Catalyst project, is actually, you know, I think exhibit A of why this process was so important. Because, you know, Mark's a busy guy. You know, he's running a good business from that location. There's really nothing pressing, right? I mean, it's something that, you know, it's like it's something you want to do, but it's not urgent. And I think that, you know, I can speak from my own perspective that, you know, this clearly has catalyzed okay, let's really put a priority on this. And if people are volunteering and the town's contributing staff time towards it, it's more likely that something's going to happen. Because otherwise, honestly, it probably would be, you know, it might be once you retire or something like that you would be looking at it. So, you know, and I think that the projects that the bars have, and then certainly, you know, our investor group, we've been in a different boat where we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars basically spinning our wheels trying to get a project going. And honestly, I've burnt out quite a few local family investors that have just cried uncle, and we've bought them out, and you know, we've been kind of, you know, I would say we've been like rebuilding our confidence and, you know, quite frankly, the guts to like re-engage in the process, knowing that it was just going to be a really expensive and potentially heartbreaking process again. And I think this Catalyst project has given us, or the idea of this Catalyst project has given us a lower barrier to engage with the town. And you know, I mean, I think it's brilliant. I'm optimistic that there's going to be a different process. And you know, I hope the town doesn't take this in the wrong way, but I think that there's some communities where you know, the development department, you know, really falls over itself to engage the local business community to figure out how they can encourage redevelopment or investment into their community. And I understand why Truckee's a bit different, because we're also really keen on protecting the resource and not wanting too much. But I'm hopeful that on some level it's going to change the dynamic a little bit in a more constructive way. So.
Hillary, you want to go back to the slide real quick, and I'll just speak to a few things real quick, just on the property. It's an old kind of Google Earth that I just took, I probably to add more, but just to kind of give everyone back. I guess this is 10603 East River Street. It's 250 feet of river frontage. So it's one of the larger river frontages along the Truckee River, basically. Residential single-family housing right to here. It's actually been developed to one parcel is only left here of a single-family residence. The rest have been kind of developed out as single-family residences. Matter of fact, the house right here was built 3 years ago. We didn't build, but we built 4 others along the strip. Just went for sale for $2.6 million, 2,600 square feet, $1,000 a square foot. So, a lot of money. That being said, we have a 4,000 square foot building here, and then we have some storage and yard, basically in this section, and full river frontage right here. This property right here is owned by Al Pombo. So it's different than the site way down here. So Al and I have talked about even like, first right of refusal, if he was gonna sell it or something like that. Hey, I'd like to buy it, because again, there's 3 warehouses, which this all used to be the Quintana property, which is whom I bought this from, but he had sold these other smaller parcels off. And so part of my discussions, and I didn't want to start any discussions with Al yet, was that, okay, Al, we've talked a little bit about it. It's like, hey, this is your maintenance building, really for operations for at the very end with the Lopez's that have now kind of taken over his, excavation company. I am really, really good friends with the Lopez's. I call their cell phone right now. So we've talked a little bit already, and so they're a family. And so I understand that. So there's nothing moving, but this facility right now is well underused, and the main maintenance mechanic passed away, unfortunately. So it's underutilized, and could they have this go somewhere else? Yes. That might be tied to here, so it's a timing thing, but it's, again, not best use to have a mechanic shop on the river that's really used a percent of the time. This is a rental property. I do not know these owners, but I know who they are. It'd be great to be able to talk with them. They rent it to a tenant, so it's more like an investment cash flow. Well, this tenant here could locate anywhere in Truckee.
Who's the tenant?
The glass company.
So that's the Deadman property?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I could
That's
locate
stuff you know.
anywhere in Truckee.
Mhm.
So, so that being said, that makes these 3 properties much more viable, and then the next property over used to be the Sutton property now, which is now John Moss's property, who talked with a little bit, and he has a town application in for development of his 1,000 feet of river frontage. And for the most part, it's only this little section right here that's, this section right here, that's kind of an eyesore, which is eventually Sutton will, finish up his business, and if John gets his approvals, or however it might go with his projects, this is all, well, not developable, because a lot of it's in the floodplain and will never be developable. And this is all, right across here from the Legacy Trail, from, this is Placer County, but this is all Parks and Recreational, which I'm on the board for. And so, our amphitheater's up here, and then the river park is down here. And this is all beautiful river frontage that will all stay part of the community and open space and other potential uses. And so seeing these properties across, straight up, it's not great. So if these could be developed in some manner, that'd be great. The McGinnity properties, like the town, they lease from UP, which is right about here, this way, and they beautified all that with boulders and trees. And if you haven't been down there, it's all landscaped, very nice. Then UP unfortunately put just an awful yard that they, right across from me here and a little ways down. And they let it go dilapidated. So they spent a lot of money on it, did it, and then it's just a mess still. So it'd be great to beautify or something like that, and eventually I assume when Sutton's lease ends here, then that could be all, and again, could be great opportunities for parking. You always gotta have parking, but you don't want parking on the river. So, because I know the town's gone into agreements with UP as well in terms of further up East River Street. They haven't beautified it, but they have it now, and that could become something like this as well. Or, again, there's lots of opportunities. We always need affordable housing. I don't see affordable housing along the river because it's some of the most expensive property we have in town. So I don't really see that as the fit, but that's just me. And again, that's why I'm here and wanting to hear from everyone. So just wanted to give a little bit more backdrop for my property, because if I don't get feedback, then I can't help to eventually change it. Because I don't want to be here 20 years from now having the same conversation.
Thank you. With that, thanks very much. I want to,
I have one more slide.
okay.
On the same topic, we have just one more slide. We don't need anybody to actively raise hands or anything, but I just need to make sure everyone's on the same page that we are looking for volunteers for both the catalyst projects. I think Pam or Jeff, maybe both of you, mentioned that we're gonna have liaisons, so that there is a river person, R2SC or action team member, going through the process with the property owner as a member of the public, as a volunteer. So as a reminder, so it was, again, we'll come up with nicknames, but right now it's the bar, the tanner, and the Holland properties, that you heard about earlier. And so if you're interested in volunteering, let staff or Jeff or Joan know. That decision will be made outside of this room so that it does not become Brown Act. But we'll make sure that it is something that makes sense. If you're interested, just let us know. And additionally, as Pam mentioned, the projects that were not selected as CALUS, but that applied, the interview team and then the Economic Vitality Action Team felt very strongly that it's something that is not a giant lift that could be helped with outside of town staff hours. So again, if any of those projects sound interesting to you, or it's something that you think you could help with, or you know someone, speak up. You don't have to do it right now. We're not putting anyone on the spot. Raise your hand, talk to, send me an email, a text, but we can't do this alone. And so this is where we can make a difference.
Yeah, and in discussion with our chair, what we have proposed is that our chair and then the chair of the Economic Vitality Action Team will be taking in those volunteer names and selecting liaisons to serve with each
I think there
project.
should be input from the interview committee.
I would also like to talk with Jen or you, Hillary, that I think it's important for staff to weigh in.
Yeah, I think we were happy to provide input,
Yeah.
but.
But it's collaborative,
We don't want
it
this to be
just-
a staff.
No,
appointment.
I
We
just,
wanna
yeah,
make that
but
clear.
I just think it's important
Yeah.
for Jen to, does this make sense?
Yeah.
And I think with the interview committee, they have some insights that, does it just line up correctly?
Well, and just, I might let you, as the chair of that committee, work
Yeah.
with, take the list and work with the committee.
yeah.
Then come back with a recommendation.
Sure, yeah.
That's probably the way it's gonna
Sounds
go,
great.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, and recognizing that we don't have everybody here tonight, and we
Yep.
have some action team members who aren't part of our 2SC.
Right.
We wanted to give a little bit of time to
Yep.
make sure we let people respond if they're interested.
And we have time, because the partnership agreement, I mean, it's gonna take 4 to 6, 8 weeks.
It will take time, but
It'll
we have
take
to
some
start with
time.
the meeting.
So we have
yes.
some time.
And our next item up for discussion is on a new subcommittee. So there's a lot of, we're gonna kind of put a lot of ideas out tonight for how the future of R2SE, goes. We have an acting receiver site subcommittee. We have our river health, but we're kind of at a pause in our discussion was that we're at a pause.
With the river
until
health and
with
access
river
action
health
team, yeah.
and action team until we get to a plan. So that one's kind of on hold. We have catalyst projects going at the economic team and a non-catalyst, but actionable team. So we know that's where the action team wants to move forward on that scope. Whether there's other scope from the action team, economic action team. And then the new subcommittee, I'm gonna turn it over to Stephanie for discussion on. Does
Yes.
that work?
May I, just quickly, it's kind of this proposed continued scope of the CVAT. If I just want to point out that the one barrier that at least we have and our neighbors have, which may or may not actually even be, because our catalyst has been the West River parcel, the river parcel, and my neighbors downriver are all affected by this, but there's the river protection overlay district and basically the 75-foot setback on the 100-year floodplain. I think that's something that I would be quite disappointed if we wrapped up our R2SC process without really engaging with this.
I think this is, if I could, Jan, it goes back a little bit to a comment I made earlier in a different context about the entire scope of the work of the River Revitalization Steering Committee. So that's an overlay zoning land use thing that's specific to that part. But we've had so many of these conversations that will apply actually to the whole geographic area. And those are not assigned right now. And I'm not advocating that they do be assigned, but those issues are not assigned to any subcommittee, but it's taken up meeting after meeting after meeting. And so I agree that there's many, many things that aren't in the scope of current subcommittees or action teams, agreeing that they're not there, but they're also not completed. Yeah, and so how do we get, I think that's what this piece of paper is, right? How do we
I
get
think I
Yes.
was just
So-
pointing out to 6.2 up there, proposed
But it was
continued
not,
scope.
that specific topic was not part of the economic vitality action team.
Right, so there's an overlap.
So there's
of
an
it.
overlap, exactly, and I think
Yeah.
we're gonna get to it here. Let's
'Cause I
walk
think
through the
that
next
falls-
part and then see if you still have the same concern.
I think that falls into the barriers piece that would be part of the larger plan.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed, and making sure we don't drop that, I think, is an important piece. So the idea, looking forward, is throughout the year, we've developed pieces of content, but that content hasn't necessarily been distilled and put into a draft plan for people to respond to as a whole. So what we'd like to do moving forward is take this next March meeting for the R2SC. I guess first we'd like to form a subcommittee that's essentially serving as a review panel to allow us.
Here, I pressed back.
Oh, you have, okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that where we were?
No, go forward one, so, or forward one more.
One more.
Yeah, so pulling together a subcommittee of 2 or 3 people, up to 5 people of the R2SC that can provide an initial review of the distillation of that draft content that we've spent the year talking about these topics, pulling that into a consolidated draft form for the R2SC then to respond to as a whole. So that would include, if you go back this
You got the clicker now. Sorry.
Thank you. So that would include looking at, the overall vision, documenting that, the goals, those framework elements, the mix of uses, from the additional work from the CVAT, the barriers, BAE. Aaron has a cost memo in terms of looking at some of the potential costs to think about the shifts and the receiver site subcommittee work, pulling that all together. So the schedule moving forward would be that those draft elements would come forward to the subcommittee at this next March meeting. The R2SC meeting itself would not be held, so that the subcommittee could take that time to really dive into the nitty-gritty, because we don't want to be doing that editing as a larger group. We'd like to sort of dive into that grit as a smaller group, bring that work back to the larger R2SC in April. The comments that we get from that April R2SC meeting, the subcommittee would meet in mid-April to review how the consultant responds to that, for that work to then go back to the R2SC in May. The idea there is, in the meantime, the receiver site subcommittee is still meeting, the CVAT is still meeting, the catalyst projects are moving forward. So the content from the draft plan goes on pause while we have some learning that occurs from the catalyst project. So the catalyst projects move forward through June, through fall, and then that information then comes back to inform the plan content as well. While the plan content, those draft elements, the framework pieces that we want to make sure helps to inform the catalyst projects is really distilled in these next 2-3 months. really working in depth with the subcommittee and then bringing that back to the R2SC to make sure that that still is on track with the ideas and the vision that have been set.
Yeah, if I can just speak to that just a bit, I think the intent of that is, what we don't wanna do is sort of wrap up a plan with a bow, you know, in May, June timeframe without having some of the learnings from the Catalyst projects, cause that's part of the intent of doing Catalyst projects is
But
that we learn through
the
that
catalyst,
process.
so what, I think what doesn't make sense about that and the risk is that we can't get participation. We just talked about 8 weeks for, I'm not sure if they're participation agreements or partnership agreements.
They're not sure either.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's gonna be, no, we do know.
Okay, so
No,
my point is,
participation or partnership.
Or collaboration.
Or
Collaboration.
collaboration.
Or
The word,
collaboration.
we're
The
not
word.
sure what.
Okay.
It's-
But
The
it's
agreements.
not gonna take 8 weeks
So-
to do that. It's not gonna take
I think
8
if there
weeks
could
to
be a
do that.
way on this schedule to decouple progress on the Catalyst projects from getting to a final action plan. The action plan would significantly recognize the Catalyst projects and recognize that there will be a potential series of changes that need to come before staff, planning commission, town council. But if we couple some undefined amount of progress on the Catalyst project to getting to a final plan, like, maybe it happens this fall, but maybe it doesn't even happen till 2026, to get to a final action plan.
I agree with your,
Yeah, and I do as well, and it's a little bit, we want to learn from our Catalyst project.
100%.
And we want to incorporate that in our plan document. Some
But
of
look at
what we
all the-
learn. So
there's so
I think
many-
it's a chicken egg here.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg, and there's so
Yeah.
many elements going back to the, I still don't really know if it's zoning or what it is, code, zoning overlays, that Jan brought up earlier.
Yeah.
So that's not gonna be resolved by the time we get an action plan. There's gonna be some discussion or recommendation that's in the action plan, but the issue itself won't be resolved. There's gonna be dozens of things like that. And
So that's kind of what this subcommittee is going to try and quantify, is those type of issues.
yep, totally.
Get them kind of
Depend on that.
percolate them a little bit, get them, some information gathering, and work towards the plan document that we're trying to put together.
Maybe I would request then that we have agreed to this evening if we could, maybe we can't this evening. We have a final action plan by this date, no matter how much learning has happened on the Catalyst projects or not. Right, so we have a final action plan by August 2025. Something goes to the town council by August 2025, because we don't even know still if town council will accept it, or if there will need to go back for another series of work and revision after it goes to town council. Right, so I'm trying to say, like, we have a final action plan in this calendar year.
So I'd just like to throw out another idea. We've talked the whole time about not being governmental and being entrepreneurial. And this feels very governmental to me. And that's not negative. Maybe it needs to be. But for the Catalyst partnership agreements, every single property is so unique and different. Every single one. And they're at different stages. And to be entrepreneurial, we've got to get these partnership agreements going quickly. And we had talked about our first meeting being in the next couple of weeks. Now, we're not gonna scope a project in one meeting, but we can start exploring. And in my experience, some of these projects they just fall into place. It's like dominoes. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. And my biggest fear is that we impose some governmental structure on this where we have to wait. And that I think would just be the biggest mistake of anything we've done. Because we have business people that have already, some who have already spent a lot of extra money. And anything they do moving forward, we don't know what the economic times are gonna be, tomorrow or in 6 months. And so I really think we have to be cognizant of what's going on, big picture, that we have people who are excited to move forward. We have 4 other projects that we can help. And I don't wanna see us overlay a process that doesn't allow us to achieve all that we can achieve as quickly as we can do it.
Hillary, how does that work with the general plan? I mean, do we have to catch up? We have to make some changes to catch up?
We do, in order, I mean, we can certainly start with, each project is in a different place, as Pam said.
Yes.
With visioning and sort of coming up with sort of the ideas and the process of how a project would move forward. But the final zoning updates from the general plan have not been completed for this area because we were waiting on recommendations from this group, which is part of why we're trying to keep that, sort of wrap up that portion of the visioning, so we can distill and make sure we got right the recommendations from this group, so we can work on finalizing those pieces.
So some of these catalyst projects may inform the update to the development code.
Potentially, but
They'll also need the update.
They'll
to the
they'll also
development
need the update to.
Pardon me?
They'll
They'll
also,
need the
you know,
update
it's
to
like
the
who comes
development code.
first. If we don't have any vision for the planning commission or anybody to weigh against, it might be harder for the projects because they're based on previous code, right? They're gonna, current
Right.
code,
Yeah.
right? So if we don't do anything, it might be at the detriment.
Yes, it'll restrict.
It'll restrict. If we try and put something together, and I think what we've heard from this group is it's really flexible, it's really broad, you know, like, so, you know, I think that's why this subcommittee has some opportunity to delve in and get kind of down into the nitty-gritty and put some stuff on paper that can be looked at by the whole committee and yes, no, push, pull, whatever. But until we can move forward on that front in some vein, I think we're kind of stymied if we just
Right.
wait for the catalyst projects to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the
So we have
catalyst
to do
projects
something.
can't happen without the zoning changes.
Right, so, yeah.
So I
exactly.
guess to Lisa's point, is this committee okay with us essentially taking those arrows off, decoupling those two pieces, that at least the draft action plan can come forward and we can determine, is that okay to move forward as is? And then maybe there's a phase 2 of that action plan. That's the takeaways from the catalyst projects
Yeah.
as an option.
I mean, as a catalyst project, I think the way this is gonna roll on some level is that the barriers to initiating some of these plans are gonna come up. We're gonna learn about that stuff pretty soon. I mean, I feel like, you know, on some level, I've shared with the committee, you know, the list as I saw it. You know, there may be others, but I don't think that we're gonna need to get far into that process before we identify the barriers that really have to be fixed through a code. I mean, I can tell you that every time I go to my planner, they're like, oh, well, sorry, you know, that's zoned high density residential, you can't upgrade the siding. You know,
And we do
that-
have some of that from the interviews too that Aaron did with everybody.
Yeah,
I think
no, I
that
mean, I
there
guess.
has to be a way in
you
the
can-
action plan that we do not have to resolve
Yeah.
that level of detail
Yeah.
to get the action plan.
Exactly.
Like, we
Right.
just,
Exactly.
We can't.
yeah, we
But that's
can't.
pointing to, this needs to
Yeah.
get resolved or
Right.
we'll still be there.
And I know that you guys, as part of your work, the committee, are going to talk about the barriers that you've already found, delve into that, and present back to us what you've heard. and what you've learned. I've heard that's on your agenda for next week.
That's on Jeff's agenda.
That's on Jeff's agenda for next week, so.
Our
Yeah,
agenda.
it's.
Well, we have to be careful. The reason I said that, I mean, it is our agenda, but the reason I said that is property owners shared some pretty specific things that could cause harm to people, individuals, and there's a lot of it. And me personally, I'm not gonna be defaming people.
No.
I'm not gonna be sharing what
You
someone
shouldn't
else
be.
said.
No, that's fine.
And I don't wanna be put in that
No.
position.
We just wanna learn. We're just trying to learn.
It's sort of a distillation of lessons learned, not getting into that
The
the
specific.
Details, yeah.
specificity.
Yeah, I think you probably know all of it.
But it will be helpful to have that sort of summarized, and that helps.
And so we would be sharing that in public session?
I think what would potentially be helpful would be figuring out, like, sort of what is a summary of some, like, key lessons
We
learned
can
that we
also
may
bring,
want to.
yeah, bring forward the barriers as known and the topics that we have, and then you could respond to that as a discussion
That might be
versus,
really helpful.
we could think about that. That's probably separate as a deep dive.
Well, as long as we can move forward with a partnership agreement and find out what options there are.
So with that,
Yeah.
to move forward, we do have a recommendation to develop this subcommittee and would like to understand who would like to be part of this subcommittee. Again, planning to meet March, potentially twice in March, and then at mid-April, looking towards, we go back to this, I'll go forward actually to this side too. Looking forward to coming in the May meeting with the, essentially the final draft plan, barring any, council comments.
Good idea, bad idea?
I think it makes sense. I was straining to, there were some check marks to the right that I
Oh,
didn't
yes,
put.
so, look back at when the R2SC was developed in 2023.
Oh, okay.
The items that had been identified is like, this is the scope, this is what the charge is as part of developing the action plan, so kudos, some checks. And then pieces that are in progress, right? And that's really what, if I go back to this slide, everything on that left are those elements that have been developed in moving towards, on the right, those three bottom areas, those three bottom bullets. And we'd like to now pull it together.
And to Lisa's point about the having a completion date, I don't find that, I think it's good to push yourself and push our committee and have that as our goal and commit to that.
Remember, we did ours in 112 days.
Right.
So
I know.
I challenge you,
Exactly.
whoever's gonna be on this
Set the
committee.
bar.
Could I submit as well to, the chicken egg, to at least get one or the other? Just because it's planned doesn't mean it's static in time forever.
That's right.
It's a starting point to begin the
Right.
conversation of, called the low-hanging fruit, things we know. And maybe part of that process is it's updated quarterly
Yeah.
for the next 36 months. As we go through the catalyst projects and the
Right.
learning curve is faster,
Yeah,
we can, it
Yeah.
can be evolutionary, not just it's one and done and they update it in
No, that's-
2030.
very good point.
Which speaks to, I would think it's a great point you're making, and
Yeah.
probably there should be a piece in the action plan that talks about
Yes.
some review and update, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I'm gonna add on to Jeff's point, I
Yeah.
think Jeff's point supports us trying to get something done by the 2-year mark
Mhm.
for the
Let's do it.
R2SC.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And recognizing that we get future bites at the apple.
Yep.
Exactly.
So this would be a non-Braun Act, so as the subcommittee, we would organize it so it's, the public is invited to the meetings, but community members are not part of the subcommittee, so that way it's not a Braun Act.
So the subcommittee's working just on the action plan.
Just on really that nitty-gritty of the information prior to it actually coming to the.
In a short
To the
term.
R2SC, so it's
Mhm.
short, so it's they would be the first review committee, right? To revise language, to make sure that what's being synthesized is on target with what the larger group has discussed.
So,
And it all comes back.
But
to
it
the
all comes
committee.
back here.
I think it's a good idea. Are you looking for a motion to approve the subcommittee, or what are
And
we
then-
looking for right now?
Yes.
And then a couple of people.
Yeah, we are looking for interest in participating on a committee, and then, yeah, motion to form
Well,
that.
I think it's a great idea, and I personally have interest in serving on the committee, particularly now that the health and access committee is a bit dormant, so. And it sounds like
How
we
about
may
we
not
do
need
the same
much.
thing that Carissa suggested for, because we've put out all these different committees, so I don't wanna get, like, everybody, if you're interested in doing a committee, please send Carissa an email. Okay, so there's 3 options. There's the Catalyst Committee, there's the non-selected Catalyst Committee, and there is the, what do we call this? Draft Plan Subcommittee. Okay, so if we agree tonight, so first I'll call for a motion to form a draft plan subcommittee.
I think we're looking for whether there's buy-in, we don't need a formal
So-
motion.
Okay, great.
Because that,
I think we have
because it's
buy-in.
not a Brown Act.
I think we have buy-in.
so you mean a draft action plan,
Draft
Yeah.
action plan.
Yep,
Yes.
that'll be the output.
Yes.
but that's a committee.
Yeah, we're calling it the Draft Plan Subcommittee.
Yeah.
Draft action, or just,
Draft action plan, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. If you
The
want the word
draft.
action, we'll add that
That'd be
to
the
it.
DAP
the word action is quite important.
So we would,
It's
yeah,
a good
if you
acronym.
have the A in there as action, it actually works as a
Yes.
better.
And just
Carissa
for-
can do better with that one.
Just for clarity, the other
That's
two
committee chair, you can name whatever
volunteer,
you want.
the other two volunteer options are not
Exactly.
really committees, we're really looking for liaisons to work with
That's
an
true.
individual, Catalyst project or one of the other property owners.
And
The others
sit
that
with-
weren't chosen.
And they would be under the
Yeah.
CDAP.
Yep.
Good, great.
And we'll send out a follow-up reminding you all that, about the volunteer opportunities.
And if you wanna get in the weeds with questions about it, you can come to me.
Wait, and there's, is there like 4 or 5 R2SC members not here this evening?
4,
4, yeah.
yeah.
And our
So-
action teams.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, so,
So I think, for the subcommittee for the action plan, you have to be on the R2SC to
Yes.
participate
Yes.
in that. I
Yes.
think that's what you
You
said.
can still
yeah.
attend as a member of the
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
But for the liaisons and the volunteers, for the non-selecteds, you could be in action.
But it'll be helpful to have that
yeah.
draft action plan subcommittee be small enough that we can get into the details.
And the non-catalyst action teams, we really want help from you guys. We definitely, and there's some exciting opportunities with these properties and property owners that I think some of you have a lot of expertise around.
And if you don't volunteer,
Uh-huh.
Pam may shoulder tax.
You may
That's what I
do
thought.
that.
It's voluntold.
Great. So I'll open for public comment on that item. Seeing none, I'll close public comment on that item. And we will move to committee member updates. I have one update. I just want to make known that we did receive a public comment from the organization that is known as the Recreational Whitewater Feasibility Group. I'm gonna, just so the committee's aware, they have requested to be on a formal agenda item. I'm gonna talk with Jen and the staff and see whether that's something we should entertain or not. So I'll let you know.
Being an avid whitewater kayak competitor, I would love to see that group be able to, if Jen
I don't
think
know
so.
that this committee has
Anything,
any reason
Yeah.
to entertain this.
No.
So I just don't think it's
Yeah.
in our scope.
probably isn't.
So, that will.
I just was putting.
I'm, you know, it's okay, but I just try and stay in our lane.
Yeah.
That's good, we have a lot.
I think we all know this, I'll just remind us all, they did do actually a really great presentation to the action team.
Yeah,
the
they
River Outlet
did.
They
Access
did.
Action Team,
They
yeah,
did.
they did a good presentation.
Any other committee member updates?
This Friday, we're doing an event downtown. It's a night of love. If people want to come downtown, we're doing kind of a Valentine's Day celebration with a couple of the merchants downtown. So if anyone wants to come down and check that out, come on down
Nice.
Neat.
from 4 to 7 o'clock.
Anybody else?
River's flowing.
After
Yeah.
tonight,
Murky.
it's probably will be for this.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen it bigger.
I know.
So, with that, I will call for adjournment, to the April. We will not have a formal R2SE meeting next, in March, we're going to have, the draft plan action subcommittee meeting. We won't have a meeting.
I'll send out email reminders.
And we're gonna begin meeting
What would that date be?
with
For
our
the draft
calendar.
session?
The same as a normal meeting in March.
Oh, okay. First Wednesday, the first Tuesday.
March
April
first.
March
April
It's April
1.
first.
And then the next one is April 1st.
Oh, man.
Wow! Gotta love that.
What was the date in March?
Great, well, thank you all so much.
I guess April 1st